Hello, welcome to CGTN. This is our special coverage on Chinese President Xi Jinping's state visit to Cambodia. Live from Beijing, I'm Pandong.
And I'm Hona. Thank you so much for joining us. Chinese President Xi Jinping is about to arrive in the Cambodia capital Phnom Penh for a state visit. This is the third stop for his Southeast Asia tour.
And we'll present you the stories of how these two neighbors communicate and cooperate in the building of a China-Cambodia community with a shared future.
We will also have in-depth discussions on how the two countries can take Xi Jinping's visit as an opportunity to further promote their relationship.
Cambodia media Khmer Times, Jianhua Daily and Fresh News have published Chinese President Xi Jinping's signed article ahead of his state visit. Cambodia is the last stop of President Xi Jinping's Southeast Asian tour. The article is titled, "Together we strive, together we thrive toward a stable and sustainable China-Cambodia community with a shared future in the new era." In the article, President Xi Jinping says it's a great pleasure to visit the home of good friends and during the Cambodian New Year, and extends warm wishes to the Cambodian people. Xi Jinping says good neighborliness and friendship form the historical foundation of the China-Cambodia community with a shared future, featuring mutual trust, loyalty, equality, mutual benefit, inclusiveness and mutual learning. In advancing bilateral cooperation in the new era, President Xi calls on both sides to deepen political mutual trust to a higher level, expand mutually beneficial cooperation with greater quality, strengthen security safeguards at an elevated tier, conduct people-to-people exchanges with increased frequency, and enhance strategic coordination to more specific standards. And the bond between China and Cambodia continues to strengthen, marked by deepening political trust, thriving economic ties, and vibrant people-to-people exchanges. Here's an overview.
China and Cambodia established diplomatic relations in 1958, laying the foundation for a lasting friendship. In 2010, the two countries elevated ties to a comprehensive strategic partnership of cooperation. In 2019, Cambodia became the first nation to sign an action plan with China to build a community with a shared future. By 2023, the initiative entered a new era marked by high quality, high level and high standards. Bilateral cooperation has achieved milestones in key sectors. China remains Cambodia's largest trading partner. Bilateral trade flourishes under the China-Cambodia Free Trade Agreement, which took effect on January 2022. It's also Cambodia's first bilateral FTA. Under the Belt and Road Initiative, the Sihanoukville Special Economic Zone stands out. The zone hit record-breaking trade volumes of more than $4 billion in 2024. Over 200 enterprises from China, Europe, the US and Southeast Asia generate some 32,000 jobs for Cambodians. The Chinese-built Phnom Penh Sihanoukville Expressway is Cambodia's first high-speed toll road, cutting travel time between the capital and the key port from more than 5 hours to under 2 hours. Bilateral cooperation in tourism and cultural sectors is also growing. 2024 was designated as Cambodia-China People-to-People Exchange Year. More than 840,000 Chinese tourists travel to Cambodia. The country expects more tourists this year, with 2025 designated as the Cambodia-China Year of Tourism. From the comprehensive strategic partnership to the innovative Diamond Hexagon cooperation framework that spans politics, industry, agriculture, energy, security and culture, China and Cambodia push forward the building of a community with a shared future.
For the very latest, let's go live to our correspondent, Silkina Aluwalia, live in Phnom Penh. Good to see you there, Silkina. So we know China and Cambodia have achieved fruitful results in their Diamond Hexagon cooperation framework. So what more can we expect from President Xi Jinping's upcoming visit?
Well, you can see the crowd of people behind me. There's a crowd in front of me as well. We've been here all morning. People have been here all morning too. They're lining up these streets. You can see China's flag waving everywhere. The mood here is truly one of celebration. This is a highly anticipated moment. It marks another chapter in the friendship between China and Cambodia. This visit is deeply symbolic. It's not just a political visit. It's about reaffirming years of trust, friendship, and support between the two nations. I've been here for a few days now. We've been talking to so many people, listening to their stories about how China has transformed their lives, not just from a larger perspective like infrastructure, but truly in their everyday lives as well. We're talking about healthcare, education, and even travel. It's evident that over the years, China has played an important role in Cambodia's development, from building roads, bridges, hospitals, schools, to helping boost Cambodia's agriculture, trade, and tourism as well. We've been seeing projects like highways and hospitals that were built with China's support under the Belt and Road Initiative. On Wednesday, we visited Cambodia's first highway from the capital city to a popular coastal town. Before China built that highway, it would take about 5 years to get there. 5 hours to get there, but now it takes only 2 hours. So you can see how these projects are really improving people's lives here and creating economic hubs in smaller areas as well. Within ASEAN, Cambodia is one of China's closest partners. The two countries have supported each other consistently on regional and international stages. And this visit by President Xi is expected to further deepen that relationship, especially in the areas of economy, technology, and cultural exchange.
Definitely, it is a highly anticipated visit. Thank you so much, Sakina, for your updates from Phnom Penh. We'll keep you updated.
Now, for more on that, let's cross live to our reporter Huang Fei, standing by at Phnom Penh Airport. Huang Fei, bring us up to date.
Well, I'm at the Phnom Penh International Airport. President Xi Jinping is going to touch down very, very soon, and he's going to receive the highest level of welcome here. The reigning monarch of Cambodia, King Sihamoni, will personally greet him here on the tarmac, right there in that pavilion there. This is unprecedented. The king has never done this until today. This just is a powerful gesture showing just how important this relationship is. Now, of course, there are big welcoming crowds behind me as well. Hundreds of people, mostly young students, teachers, and civil servants. They really represent the future of bilateral ties. And of course, it's not just here at the airport. We are told by officials right here at the airport that actually 26,000 people have come out today across the city to welcome the president. And there is a sense of gratitude towards China, a country that has invested immense amounts in the country, transforming Cambodia's economy. Now, Senate leader Hun Sen, as well as Prime Minister Hun Manet, are also going to meet the president. Of course, there will be talks about, enhancing this relationship. President Xi has talked about, putting forward the China-Cambodia community with a shared future, something that Hun Manet has praised as well in a speech yesterday. So all eyes are on Phnom Penh as both countries start to elevate this relationship. And we're hearing some sound from in the background. Possibly the plane will be touching down soon. Back to you.
Thank you very much, our reporter Huang Fei at Phnom Penh Airport. Now, for more insights, let's talk to our studio guests, Professor Chu Chang and Associate Professor Wang Xing-song. Thank you very much for joining us. Gentlemen, so as we just heard from our reporters on site, Chinese President Xi Jinping is about to arrive in Phnom Penh for a state visit to Cambodia, and we can already sense that warm, welcoming atmosphere all around Cambodian capital. You can see that people are already standing by along main streets of Phnom Penh, waiting for the Chinese president presidents. Now, talking about expectations towards outcomes of this highly anticipated state visit, maybe we can get some crucial signals from President Xi Jinping's signed article published on Cambodian media ahead of his arrival. In that article, he actually raised 5 proposals to enhance bilateral ties. Bearing that in mind, Professor Chu, what do you make of the first proposal to deepen high-level political mutual trust?
Well, I think China and Cambodia's mutual friendship and mutual trust has already been at a very, very high level. That's the reason why we call each other ironclad friend. Actually, the two civilizations has been knowing each other for more than 2,000 years. And ever since that, we have no war, we have no conflicts, we have only communication exchanges and cooperations. And we have to understand, ever since New China has been established and ever since this bilateral relationship has been founded back in the 1958, the older generation of the leaders from both sides actually really trust each other. And we have achieved many miracles and achieved many high-level cooperations. But here today, we're welcoming a very, very different world right now. Just take a look at the backdrop internationally. I think our leaders has mentioned it very clearly. This is an unprecedented, challenging era we have never seen in centuries. So how these two nations marching towards hand in hand and shoulder by shoulder should face this challenge together in this new turbulent era. I think this is the topic I'm expecting the two sides leaders were going to talk to each other. For example, politically, higher trust, higher level of the mutual dialogue and cooperation is a must. Not only what we need to do right now, this is what we have to do right now. I still remember Huntington used to say during his book of the Clash of the Civilizations, in the future, probably we're going to have some segregated internationalization featuring what we call the civilization zones, which means the country with very similar civilizations and mutual understanding will bond together more closer with each other. And that's the reason why I think we're expecting this high-level meetings in the international governance through the APEC, through the ASEAN plus China mechanism, through the BRICS working mechanism, and also the extended Shanghai Organization working mechanism. I think China and Cambodia will provide much more support and commitment, as well as for leadership towards this turbulent world, and make a commitment to further certainty and stability to the world. It's going to be eventually a great news for not only both of our country, but also for the whole region, as well for the rest of the world.
I want to follow up on Mr. Chu's analysis to Professor Wang. As we have seen in China and Cambodia, friendly exchanges dating back to more than 2,000 years ago. So we can say a deep sense of friendship and loyalty is the defining feature of China-Cambodia ties. Well, as Mr. Chu has elaborated, under this very complicated geopolitical confrontation, what does this ironclad friend mean?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think I agree with Professor Chu's point that the relationship between the two countries, China and Cambodia, are built upon not just material interests or strategic interests, but very much on our historical and cultural bonds. And like you said, our history goes back to over 1,000 years ago, and Cambodia is one of the our neighboring countries that we never had conflict whatsoever, territorial or other aspects. So that really contributes to the trust and respect of each other. And in fact, after 1950s, China has supported the Cambodian government very much with foreign aid and other source of aid, which has contributed to the Cambodian economy. And in the more contemporary era, we have seen that the Cambodian infrastructure, industry, and other aspects of the economy and have benefited a great deal from the Chinese investments and Chinese foreign aid. So all of that is telling us that China and Cambodia have been building upon a very strong and foundation of mutual respect. At the same time, there is a very high prospect that the two countries can further develop. into a very new chapter.
Professor Chu, let me follow up on your earlier notion regarding to Samuel Huntington's clash of civilizations. Do you think actually members of the East Asian and Southeast Asian community are now aiming to go beyond that because civilizations don't need to clash with each other to reach another level of existence, right? Because China has been advocating dialogues among civilizations, and this is also echoed by many leaders in the region. For example, President Xi Jinping just finished a very successful state visit to Malaysia, and the Malaysian Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim has also been advocating dialogue and common values among civilizations and different cultures. Tell us more about your thoughts on this.
Well, I'm glad you asked the question. Civilization is probably our most important issue, always mentioned by President Xi Jinping. Well, we don't want the clash. As a matter of fact, actually, China never had a clash with other civilization. In our philosophy, we always adore diversity and unity, and respect each other of their each own beauty. This is our philosophy. That's the reason why I think between China and ASEAN nations, for thousands of years, we always lived together prosperously and peacefully. China never waged a colonial war against ASEAN nations. Even in the past, 3,000 years, China probably is a very large power against, compared to the ASEAN nations. But we'll never get the colony in there. We always do trade, culture, civilization exchanges. We never send even one, missionaries to go to the ASEAN nation to spread any kind of religions, but only have the education exchanges with each other. Remember, this happened in the span of 3,000 years. Never a clash. Of course, we stay away in the very far east of the whole world. We stay always away from the trouble centers in the Middle East, in the Middle Europe, or in the Near East. This is our thing, to be peaceful and coexist with each other. So I think that's the reason why China, as the first one, have been proposing one strong idea. That is to build the human community with a shared future. To build the human community with a shared future between China, Vietnam, China, Malaysia, China, and Cambodia, even though we have very different, maybe face, maybe language, maybe color skin, whatever you mention, but we still manage to respect and, communicate with each other. We, for example, as Malaysia, we just visited, very different religions and a very different culture, but still for thousands of years in the Malaysian peninsula and also in China, our people talk to each other and trade with each other with no obstacle. Same idea with Cambodia. Cambodia believes in a Hinamaya, while in China we have the Mahamaya. Very differently, but there's no religious conflicts at all. But instead, those monks from two sides actually been talking to each other, switched the transcript for thousands of years, try to preserve the history. For example, when Cambodia used to fall into the war, like 1,000 years ago, their historic record has all been lost in the war fire. But in China, we actually kept all the historic record in the customs of Cambodia, written in Yuan dynasty, in Kublai Khan's period of time. And that kind of the record actually has been moving back to Cambodia to show them what happened in the history. And they really cherish that, and vice versa. Cambodia also recorded lots of Chinese trade data, Chinese trade cultures, and also the Buddhian cultures, and it given back to China.
Indeed, and going back to reality, this is also a very strong foundation for people-to-people exchanges between China and Cambodia. Very evident because we can see people from all walks of life in Cambodia are actually waiting for the arrival of President Xi Jinping on a main street of Phnom Penh. We'll be getting back to you on this for more insight, gentlemen. Now let's get more updates.
Well, a survey conducted by CGTN and Renmin University of China shows that Cambodia recognized China's contributions to the world in various aspects. Nearly 93% of 1,010 Cambodian respondents said China has made positive contributions in maintaining world peace and security. 95.2% recognized China's positive role in global poverty reduction and development assistance. Nearly 95% credited China with making positive contributions to global climate change and environmental protection. In terms of contributions to global health governance, 95.2% affirmed China's role, and 95% of respondents also said China's development has a positive impact on the world, and 94.5% agreed that China values mutually beneficial cooperation with developing countries, and 95% said China respects the sovereignty and culture of other countries.
So, gentlemen, let's put this into context. Professor Wang, of course, we've seen global respondents to China's development path, but let's put this into a bilateral context, China-Cambodia ties. In his signed article, President Xi Jinping has proposed for the two countries to expand more high-quality cooperation that is mutually beneficial in nature. What kind of concrete actions are you expecting in this particular regard?
Right. I think over the past decades, China has contributed, like we just mentioned, a lot on Cambodian infrastructure, industrial zone building, and so on and so forth. And now that the Chinese economy is upgrading itself to a high-quality development style, and Chinese manufacturing has been upgrading. So that means China is building a much more expanded ecosystem for industrialization and manufacturing, which then would involve many of our neighboring countries within the ecosystem, including the three countries that President Xi is currently visiting, and Cambodia certainly is going to be one of the critical part of the ecosystem. Now that the infrastructure is ready and the industrial zone at the seaport is ready, I think Cambodia can certainly take more advantage of all these infrastructure and the capacity to be involved in the Chinese industrial ecosystem to benefit the local economy. In fact, the Cambodia economy has seen growing job opportunities becoming available, and more easy access to infrastructure and to the foreign trade. And we're talking about over 200 international companies setting up shop in Cambodia in the past decade, which benefit from the infrastructure that the Chinese foreign aid has contributed.
Exactly. Apart from mutually political trust, which lays a solid foundation for bilateral relations, the civilizations among our people-to-people exchanges. Trade is another important topic, as it is mentioned and highlighted in President Xi Jinping's written article upon his arrival. Well, he emphasized, the first China-Cambodia free trade deal, which took effect in January the 1st, 2022, which is Cambodia's first such deal. So what does it mean and the key implications for both economies?
Well, I think this is a very important topic. Well, when we're talking about the bigger country investing or trading with another smaller economy, a lot of people always think probably, okay, you're dumping your capacity to another nation, or you probably want to transfer your low-end industry to another nation. But somehow this is not what China mean and China wanted to do. I always explained during our interviews, I said, because the philosophy in China's leadership and in China's commercial community, we believe in one thing. Just imagine that China is the largest manufacturer of the whole world. We have probably the best infrastructure building capacities. Just imagine, do you want a turbulent, troubled, and a poor neighbor, or do you want a well-off, peaceful, stable neighbor? This is just a simple equation, right? We want to trade with each other. We never wage any wars or conflicts with our neighbors. So only thing we want to do is that the common prosperity and a mutual beneficial result with each other. Because of that, I think China wants to, prosper together with our neighbors, with Malaysia, with Vietnam, with Cambodia as well. Right now, I think Cambodia really are hitting very important opportunity moment. They want to develop the modernization of the Cambodian style. They want infrastructures. They want to promote their living standard of all people. And I think that's the moment when China can help. Green energies. Well, Cambodia is not a traditional energy-rich nation. So green energies can actually help them to get a cheaper energy, so they can fill up their AI. They can build up the digitalization, e-commerce with China, and then they get the physical infrastructures like the airport, like the great bridges and the ports. So everything will just span out and then help Cambodia to move up the ladders from a low-income nation to a middle-income economy, and then higher and higher to meet the standard of the whole ASEAN nations, and then finally catch up with the latest standards of the whole world. So I think this is what Chinese people really believe in, and as I just mentioned, if we can all respect and adore each other's beauty, we can be beautiful together.
And in this sense, Professor Wang, I think it's fair to say that the alignment of the two countries' development strategies and policies is of great importance to the success of this grand design. Tell us more about the thinking from the Cambodian side on this.
Well, the Cambodians are very eagerly looking for alternative options of developing their economy. And so far, they have relied a lot on their agriculture. But industrialization is the way to go for all the developing countries, including China itself. And we have learned a great lesson that only through industrialization can we become a modern nation. So I think Cambodia is looking up to the China model, to the Chinese experience of how to diversify its economy. That's why it has been very eager to seek investments from the Chinese manufacturing sector. At the same time, we're talking about not just cooperation on one aspect. We're talking about cooperation on 6 aspects, including energy, industrialization, agriculture, technology, and so forth. So that means that Cambodia has a lot that it can benefit from the Chinese investment and Chinese technological know-how. I think through investment, the Chinese producers have also brought their technologies to the local manufacturing capacity. They've also been able to train local managers and workers to be more able to tap into the Chinese manufacturing capacity and technology pool. So all of that is helping the Cambodian economy to develop into a more comprehensive economy.
Exactly, follow up on that. In his written article, President Xi noted China's support for several of Cambodia's inaugural infrastructure projects, like the country's first highway, the country's first large power plant, and its largest stadium. So, Mr. Chu, how do these joint efforts benefit Cambodia's development and its people?
Well, I think it benefits a lot. For example, from the Phnom Penh to the Sihamoni port, I usually will have to travel like more than 5 hours. Well, it's longer than that. I used to do poverty alleviation in Cambodia. Trust me, it used to take you more than 10 hours because this is really muddy road and very hard to travel. Until we have the standard road, okay, shortened to like 5 hours. And now we're talking about 2 hours. This is very important. Just imagine traveling from Beijing to Shanghai, we used to spend like more than 10 hours in China. So this 2 powerhouse of economy in China never bonded together in the past like 20 years ago, until we have Beijing to Shanghai Express Highway and also the high-speed rail. 2 cities actually bonded with each other with only 4.5 hours. Huge economic power has been released. And now we're talking about Phnom Penh and also the Sihamoni. When these 2 areas, it's like Shanghai and Shenzhen, are bonded together within 2 hours, imagine this power can be released. And also this network of the transportation will be extended into Siem Reap. Okay, this Siem Reap also will have the Angkor Wat, they have the airport. So when you have this transportation network, everything will change. Because in poverty alleviation in China, we have some experience. We say if you want to get rich, pave the road first. That's just one thing. And also talking about the other infrastructure buildings. For example, we just opened up the 71C highway and also China-Cambodia Friendship Bridge. And all these kind of infrastructures actually has been pulling up like billions of the US dollars worth of the GDP and creating more than 20,000 jobs within the whole territory. Imagine, Cambodia is not that big country population-wise. So this actually means lots of the job, lots of the middle-income class has been created. And talking about culture exchange, something, it's the same. And also, last but not least, I would like to echo with Professor Wang, is that management and the skill training experience. Remember that back in the 1980s, China used to benefit from ASEAN nations in opening and reform. Mr. Deng Xiaoping pointed out very wisely. He said, this is not only about money. It means they will train our managers who can manage the assembly line, business project. So the CP group from Thailand, so the Lipo group from from Indonesia, and some other groups from Malaysia, they've been investing, and also from Singapore, Temasek. They've been investing in southern China, created the whole generation of the skillful workers, managers. They become the laying foundation of the Chinese takeoff in the economy back in the 1990s and 2000s. So that experience will be repeated again in Cambodia again.
Professor Wang, still tracing that momentum beautifully described by Professor Chu here. How can this momentum translate better into digitalization?
Right, and I mean, if you look at the 3 countries where President Xi Jinping is currently visiting, Vietnam, Malaysia, and Cambodia, and out of the 3, I think it's fair to say that Vietnam and Malaysia have been more integrated into the Chinese e-commerce and digitalization era. For example, in Vietnam, I understand that the local residents can easily purchase consumer products from Taobao or PDD. And that's benefiting from the logistic arrangement between the two countries and, of course, the Chinese modern e-commerce industry. Now, Cambodia certainly can do much better in benefiting the Chinese e-commerce ecosystem.
And as we're talking about this, we're watching live footage from Phnom Penh airport. This is the convoy of Cambodian King Norodom Sihamoni. The Cambodian king has arrived at the airport to warmly welcome Chinese President Xi Jinping's arrival for a state visit. You're watching live footage from Phnom Penh. This is the arrival of the Cambodian king at the airport.
This is actually unprecedented for the king to have the greetings at the airport to President Xi Jinping.
And this is the very first time for the Cambodian king to personally welcome a foreign head of state at airport. This is the very first time. So from this very fact, people can interpret the significance both countries have put into their bilateral ties, and of course to the state visit of Chinese President Xi Jinping to Cambodia this time. You're watching live footage from Phnom Penh.
Okay, I want to follow up to Mr. Chu as what you said. The infrastructure building China's assistance to Cambodia. Actually, in his written article, President Xi has raised some very touching personal stories. For example, the project of China-Cambodia Friendship Poverty Alleviation Demonstration Village is completed. And then, thanks to the treatment by the traditional Chinese medicine teams, a hearing-impaired girl actually articulated mama for the very first time, and a wheelchair user got back on his feet. So these were the personal stories that President Xi wants to share with the rest of the world, see how China and Cambodia's mutually beneficial relationship actually benefited people's livelihood.
Oh yes, I'm glad to ask that because I was in this kind of project myself with IPRCC, which is the Chinese International Poverty Alleviation Center affiliated to Ministry of Agriculture. When we're going there, we find that many countries' poverty alleviation team was there. And many, international poverty alleviation agencies, they're just telling them to give them instructions. You should do that, you should do that. But Chinese team actually are very silent. We don't say much, we just do the thing. Pave the road, help them to build better crops, to have a higher yielding, or if they have people getting sick or getting disabled, then we build the healthcare facilities to help the children you just mentioned, to help the disabled people you mentioned, and to give out all kinds of the medicines, and to train the local doctors. So I think China believing one thing, give you the fish is not good enough. Rather, we should teach you how to do the fishing. So this is what we believe, empowerment. And ever since that time, because President Xi Jinping pays really lots of attention to not only China's poverty alleviation, but his idea of everybody should get out of the poverty. No one should be left behind around China. I think this is really important. That's the reason why we got the international poverty alleviation back in Cambodia. So when we're going there, we try to build up what we call the technology center to teach them how to plant properly the crop, give them the better seeds, and also teach them how to use the better fertilizer and build the fertilizer factories in the local places. And many of them actually are pro bono. It's not for money because in China, we're not that market oriented. Sometimes we'll believe something is going beyond the money. It's priceless. Friendship, culture bondage, that's the thing we're paying attention to. That's the reason why we've been seeing, actually, for example, we have a project between Yunnan and also the Siem Reap Center. It's trying to teach them to build the rice and the coffee. And right now, if you go to that center, you find surrounding the center, lots of the villages, townships are getting richer, and they're shipping their products, their grains and their fruits through the transportation network we've been building together back to China and enriching the local, livelihood a lot. So this is just one example to showing how it works. Actually, we have tons of the kind of stories in Malaysia, in Indonesia, in Vietnam, and Laos.
And talking about localization and being mutually beneficial, Professor Wang, I'd like to follow up on the digitalization topic, going digital. Earlier we talked about e-commerce, but it's so much more about that, right? It's also about hard infrastructure, and it's also about the digitalization liberalization of customs clearance on both sides, and the whole logistical chain. And eventually this can also benefit supply and industrial chains between the two countries and even in the region. Tell us more about the momentum and the potential of this massive bid.
Right. I think digitalization can certainly contribute to the existing trade relations between China and Cambodia. And if you talk about agricultural imports, China and Cambodia have signed a free trade economic agreement, which means China now is opening its door to Cambodian agricultural products, right? So if we can further digitalize...
And talking about this brighter future, we're watching live footage from Phnom Penh. This is the plane of Chinese President Xi Jinping. Chinese President Xi Jinping is about to arrive at Phnom Penh for a highly anticipated state visit to Cambodia. And Cambodian King Norodom Sihamoni is waiting for the arrival of the Chinese President at Phnom Penh airport. And this is of great significance here because this is the very first time the Cambodian king is welcoming a foreign head of state at airport. So from this very fact, we can easily tell that great significance put on by both sides to this highly anticipated state visit to Cambodia by Chinese President Xi Jinping. This is live footage from Phnom Penh airport. And ahead of his arrival, Chinese President Xi Jinping published a signed article on major Cambodian media, greeting the Cambodian people for the Cambodian New Year. This is the plane of Chinese President Xi Jinping. Now, it has touched down at Phnom Penh airport. This also marks the start of Chinese President Xi Jinping's state visit to Cambodia.
This is also the last stop and the third stop of his three-nation Southeast Asian tour, followed by Vietnam, Malaysia. And this is also the second visit by President Xi Jinping in 9 years to Cambodia.
And we can see the atmosphere at the Phnom Penh airport is very warm. Of course, there are Chinese people and overseas Chinese waiting there to greet the Chinese president, but we can also see that many Cambodian people are also waiting there. And this is the Senate President of Cambodia, Hun Sen. A very warm welcome is held at Phnom Penh airport for the arrival of Chinese President Xi Jinping. And as we just reported, ahead of his arrival, Chinese President Xi Jinping published a very warm and upbeat signed article on major Cambodian media. And he started by saying that he's very happy to visit Cambodia on the occasion of the coming New Year. And for him, it feels like going to the home of a good friend. And from this welcoming ceremony, from the enthusiasm from people waiting there, you can easily tell that most of them are actually Cambodian people from all walks of life.
We can tell from the live pictures that the atmosphere there is warm. And as President Xi says, he's very happy to visit Cambodia for the second time in 9 years. Well, President Xi said in his written article upon his arrival, he said good neighborliness and friendship from the historical foundation of the China-Cambodia community with a shared future, featuring mutual trust, loyalty, equality, and mutual benefit. He also said in advancing bilateral cooperation in the new era, he called on the two countries to deepen political mutual trust to a higher level and expand mutually beneficial cooperation with greater quality, strengthen security safeguards at an elevated tier. He especially emphasized the importance of people-to-people exchanges with increased frequency and enhanced strategic coordination to more specific areas.
And you're watching live footage from Phnom Penh airport. Chinese President Xi Jinping has arrived in Phnom Penh for a state visit to Cambodia. This is the plane of Chinese President Xi Jinping. It has touched down, now is taxiing at Phnom Penh Airport. Chinese President Xi Jinping has arrived in the Cambodian capital for a state visit. And what we can see, a very solemn and also warm welcome ceremony is held by the Cambodian royal family and the Cambodian government at the airport. Cambodian King Norodom Sihamoni is waiting for Chinese President Xi Jinping at the airport. This is the very first time for the Cambodian king to personally welcome a foreign head of state at airport. The very first time for the Cambodian royal family.
Apart from the royal family, also the Cambodian People's Party president and standing president Hun Sen is also going to be there to welcome President Xi alongside with other state leaders from Cambodia.
And just as Chinese President Xi Jinping said in his signed article published ahead of his arrival, he said China-Cambodia ties, this very strong momentum, is deeply rooted in the historic legacy of good neighborly relations. And of course, this is also proved by this close cultural link between the two sides. And for thousands of years, people from the two sides have been communicating with each other, trading with each other, and living peacefully with each other. And what's worth mentioning is that the arrival of Chinese President Xi Jinping in Cambodia coincides with the country's Khmer New Year. And he extended his warmest New Year greetings to, quote-unquote, our brothers and sisters in Cambodia ahead of his arrival.
This is such a highly anticipated visit as China and Cambodia's long-standing partnership is marked by high-level diplomatic exchanges, expanding trade and deepening cooperation across diverse fields. Well, the two countries reaffirmed their close political ties by signing a new action plan in 2023, outlining joint goals through 2028. Well, Cambodia was the first nation to sign such a plan with China to build a community with a shared future, underscoring its strategic significance in the region.
Now, just to provide our global audience with more information on practical cooperation between China and Cambodia. For many years, China has been Cambodia's largest trading partner and largest source of investment. And the two countries' industrial and supply chain cooperation has continued to deepen. Now, premium agricultural products from Cambodia, including banana, mango, and logan, are finding their way into Chinese households. And let's remember, China is the world's largest consumer market. And talking about specific localized cooperation projects, the Sihanoukville Special Economic Zone must be mentioned. It's developing through China and Cambodia cooperation. It's drawn more than 200 international companies to establish local operations. Now, as we just reported, gentlemen, for the very first time, the Cambodian king has personally welcomed a foreign head of state at airports. What do you make of this gesture, Professor Wang?
Well, I think, like you said earlier, this is unprecedented. I think this definitely shows the highest degree of respect and attaching the greatest importance to the visit by the head of state of Chinese government. And I think this also features the importance of the relations between the two countries. And as a matter of fact, the Chinese leadership for decades have always been maintaining a very friendly and close relationship with the royal families of Cambodia, the current one included. And so that also tells you the close bond between the two countries, not just built upon, like I said earlier, upon material interests, but also on common values and the friendship as well. So again, I'm very much looking forward to President Xi Jinping's visit to Cambodia and the meeting between him and the king, and meeting between him and the government heads and other officials to deliver more important speeches and signing more important agreements.
Both of you gentlemen have mentioned the Sihanoukville Special Economic Zone, which is a landmark project in Cambodia and also the largest economic zones in a key China-Cambodia project. So, Mr. Chu, how has this, landmark economic zone driven local economic growth and benefited the peoples?
Well, if you're not familiar with the Sihanoukville Special Economic Zone, probably should look into Shenzhen. Well, in the 1980s, a lot of people still don't know about Shenzhen, but take a look right now. Shenzhen probably is a world brand name. Everybody knows what Shenzhen is. It's an economic miracle as a high-tech, guru in all kinds of industries. Well, Sihanoukville, I think, is anchored or try to set up a standard like Shenzhen. It's going to be the Shenzhen of the Cambodia. We have more than 200 very high-level, very large-size Chinese enterprises has been located in this, industrial park. And they're bringing not the low-end industry. I mean, lots of our high-tech, tech-savvy industries in there to teach, and to train the local managers, skilled workers, and to transfer technology to Cambodia to build here as a high ground in not only the manufacturing, but also in technology, in digitalization and green economy. So in the future, you're going to see many of this kind of new business models are going to happen based on the Sihanoukville Industrial Park and also spreading to the rest of the Cambodia. I just echo to Professor Wang's mentioning about the digitalization, for example, live streaming. In the poverty alleviation we used to do before, it's still the traditional way. But right now, if you go to Sihanoukville, you will find many young people. They're very fast learner. They're doing the live streaming, sell all kinds of the agricultural products, local, manufacturing product through the TikTok, through the Little Red Note, all kinds of things. Back to China and also sell to all over the world in ASEAN nations, in North America, and getting a very good job opportunity for themselves and also adding a new rich generation into this country. So very wonderful changes are happening.
And I believe more importantly, this Sihanoukville Special Economic Zone is not exclusive to China and Cambodia, and we can see that international companies has been establishing operations there, right, Mr. Chu?
Oh yes. Many countries have their best enterprises have already entered the Sihanoukville. For example, ASEAN nations is never a problem. From Malaysia, we know that groups from Malaysia, from Singapore, from Indonesia, and also from Vietnam, they've been setting up their industries also in this industrial park and also special economic zones. And also Europe and also American companies are also coming in here because they don't want to miss the opportunity, and also they want to import all kinds of products on the first hand. They get a very good deal out of this and ship immediately back to their own country, especially against the current, very turbulent economic, outlook here. So I think this becomes a new vibrant growth point for not only Cambodia and ASEAN nations, but also for the rest of the world.
Well, Professor Wang, in recent years, China and Cambodia have continued to deepen their strategic mutual trust. Well, their cooperation has enriched the Diamond Hexagon framework. So if it's compared to a diamond, so how does this steady progress in building a industrial development corridor and the fish and rice corridor mean, in this very complicated geopolitical landscape?
Right. So when we talk about the free economic zone between China and Cambodia, we're still, up until now, we're still talking a lot about agricultural imports from Cambodia to China, with zero tax. So a lot of fruits from Cambodia being imported to China, China still being the largest trading partner with Cambodia. But agriculture should just be one of the pillars of the mutual trade and economic cooperation, and we can extend and diversify the trade and economic relationship to other areas. For example, energy cooperation, and the Sihanoukville port is strategically important because it is also cutting short the trading route, the sea lane route from Middle East to Eastern China. So that means the port can play a much more critical role in saving energy costs and the shipping costs. And in the future, we're expecting digitalization.
Now we can see that actually at the pilot's cabin, there have been someone waving Chinese and Cambodian national flags. This is live footage from Phnom Penh airport. Chinese President Xi Jinping has just arrived in the Cambodian capital for a state visit. Yes, Professor, you were saying.
Yeah, I was just going to say, with further digitalization, I think the custom clearance and the trading port facilities can be further utilized to cut down the costs of production and the trade and cargo transportation. So all of that is saying that we need more infrastructure, particularly digital infrastructure, including power plants, including fiber optic wiring cables, and so on and so forth, so that Cambodia can be further integrated into the digital ecosystem of the Chinese economy.
I want to follow up on the agricultural agreements on that part. In his written article, President Xi mentioned, Cambodia fruit like mango, coconut were, exported to China, which is, Chinese people's one of their favorite. Are we going to anticipate, major deals in agriculture this time around?
Well, exactly. Well, there's a sad story. We have one of the largest original production place of the coconuts, for example, in Hainan province. But because Hainan have been developed as a tourism, resort island or a free economic zone, so I think their coconut industry actually has been slowing down. But also you have to understand the consumption for coconut, products, and for example, coconut, pulp, coconut juice has been, skyrocketing in Chinese market because we have the bubble tea, we have all kinds of these, people who like the YOLO life. But where do we get this extra coconut? Now Cambodia came in, Vietnam came in. These places are being famous for their tropical fruit, very high qualities, and also they have a very, competitive, price and qualities against, all the other counterparts. So I think this is the moment when China can really ship in and buy a lot of their products, and also can be translated into local jobs and local income. We have already signed lots of deals through Shanghai Expo, and now I think with the leaders visit this time, very large contract can be actually expected.
And gentlemen, you both talked about agriculture a lot. I think it's a common misconception that it's about hard labor. It's about labor intensive, and sometimes it's not exactly cost effective. But that's a misconception, right? Because the modernization of agriculture is very crucial for a country's whole modernization and industrialization process. Tell us the potential of the two sides that can work together on this particular regard.
Right. I think earlier Professor Tu made a point about the cooperation between China and Cambodia over modern agricultural technologies, and China has contributed a lot through foreign aid to the Cambodian modernization of agriculture, and both countries share similar terrains. For example, in southern China, you have a lot of mountain areas in Guangxi, Yunnan provinces where agriculture has been upgraded through modern technologies. And similarly in Cambodia, Vietnam, and other neighboring countries, they share similar terrains. So they're also producing similar products and crops like rice. They do fishing as well. So the modern technologies that have been developed in China can also be utilized in Cambodia. That's where the two sides have been cooperating with each other through foreign aid and also through agricultural industrialization projects.
In terms of poverty reduction and foreign aid, as we mentioned earlier, a recent CGTN and Renmin University polls shows 95.2% of Cambodia respondents believe China has significantly contributed to global poverty reduction, while 95% view China's development as having a positive global impact. So, Mr. Chu, what is your take on this? How can China further assist Cambodia in poverty alleviation?
Well, I don't need to believe, because we have already seen it before. Among all kinds of demonstration center of Chinese poverty alleviation, I think 100% has already, get out of poverty. Just take a look, go there, pay a visit. For example, in Siem Reap, I just mentioned, you go to their technology center or demonstration center. After we're teaching them how to, plant property of the crops and the fruit and use fertilizers and, how to select the good seeds, everybody in these villages are getting out of the grinding, desperate poverty already. Previously, I think back in 2015, many people out there, probably the living standards are below $2 a day. But right now, I think you're looking at every family, their living standards is basically more than like $5 to $10 already. So they're They're good with the food, with the clothing, but I'm not saying this is enough. We still need to have a long way to go. We need to empower those places with better water system, better coverage of the internet, with better electricity coverages, and all these will empower them for the second time to help them build the another layer of the capacity in the manufacturing, food processing, and also culture industries. Actually, and Cambodian people are very good at culture activities, so we need to play the strengths out. And also eventually, I think after this visit, after a new round of the cooperation to a higher level, and I think those areas will going to benefit even more, and people are seeing that. So I think these exemplary effect will be amplified and spread to the rest of the Cambodia, and also be learned by all ASEAN nations people. And as I just mentioned, in Laos, in Vietnam, similar effect has already been playing out. So after all these, I think the whole peninsula south of China will form a network of inclusive development, a network of poverty alleviation.
And indeed, gentlemen, I think it's fair to say that none of those developmental goals can be reached without security guarantees. And Chinese President Xi Jinping, in his signed article, also proposed China and Cambodia to jointly build a higher level security guarantee for each other. What's your reading into this, Professor Wang?
Right. Again, I think the security relationship between the two countries has gone a long way back, and especially in the contemporary era, where the uncertainties both in the region and in the world are simply escalating on a daily basis. We definitely need a more stabilizing force. In the region, I think China is playing a critical role, but we need partners. And I think Cambodia has traditionally been one of the strongest, closest security partners of the Chinese. So the current visit is going to further emphasize on the importance between the two countries on security issues, but at the same time, we're trying to promote the values and ideas of inclusiveness and also cooperation and dialogue in order to overcome the conflict rather than taking the methods of wars and conflicts. So that's part of the global security initiative and global civilization initiative that the Chinese government has been promoting to the world. I think the Cambodian side is certainly on the same page with the Chinese government on those initiatives.
Well, peace and security.
Now let's cross live to Phnom Penh Airport. Chinese President Xi Jinping is now greeting the welcome crowd at Phnom Penh Airport. Chinese President Xi Jinping has arrived in Phnom Penh for a state visit to Cambodia. This is live footage from the Cambodian capital. Chinese President Xi Jinping is warmly welcomed by people from all walks of life in Cambodia.
And Cambodia King Norodom Sihamoni is at the airport to welcome President Xi, and this is unprecedented for the king. Well, the King Sihamoni met with Chinese President Xi Jinping in September 2023 when the king attended the opening of the 19th Asian Games in Hangzhou. During that meeting, the Cambodian king said his country will continue to jointly build a Belt and Road Initiative and a Cambodia-China community with a shared future.
And Chinese President Xi Jinping has extended New Year greetings to quote-unquote brothers and sisters in Cambodia, because this state visit coincides with the Khmer New Year in Cambodia, and Chinese President Xi Jinping has sent his warmest greetings to the Cambodian government and people ahead of his arrival, and this is a highly anticipated state visit.
And you're now watching live pictures from the airport, where the atmosphere there is warm, and people from Cambodia are warmly welcoming the Chinese president, which is his second visit in 9 years to the country.
And honor guards are also standing by for the review of the leaders of the two countries, Chinese President Xi Jinping and Cambodian King Norodom Sihamoni. This is the first time for the Cambodian king to personally welcome a foreign head of state at the airport. Many are also believing that this state visit could start a new chapter for a higher-level China-Cambodian relationship. Chinese President Xi Jinping and Cambodian King Norodom Sihamoni. The king is holding a welcome ceremony at the airport, the national anthem of the People's Republic of China. National anthem of Cambodia. You're watching live footage from Phnom Penh Airport. Cambodian King Norodom Sihamoni is welcoming Chinese President Xi Jinping for a state visit. The state visit coincides with the Khmer New Year in Cambodia. Honor guards are also standing by for the review from the leaders of the two countries. People from all walks of life in Cambodia are warmly welcoming the arrival of Chinese President Xi Jinping on this highly anticipated state visit. Now, China and Cambodia are on the path to jointly build a community of shared future of China-Cambodia. Chinese President Xi Jinping is reviewing the Guard of Honor of Cambodia at Phnom Penh Airport. This is live from the Cambodian capital. Cambodian King Norodom Sihamoni is holding a welcoming ceremony for Chinese President Xi Jinping.
This is also his second time in 9 years to visit the country. Well, he said he is very happy to visit. It's a great pleasure to visit the home of good friends during the Cambodian New Year.
And China-Cambodia ties are mutually beneficial in nature. For many years, China has been Cambodia's largest trading partner and largest source of investment, and the industrial and supply chain cooperation between the two sides has continued to deepen. Premium agricultural products from Cambodia, including banana, mango, and logan, are finding their way into Chinese households in recent years. Another flagship project of cooperation is the Sihanoukville Special Economic Zone. It has been developing through China-Cambodia cooperation, and it has already drawn more than 200 international companies to establish operations there. This is not a project exclusive to China-Cambodia. Now, Cambodian King Norodom Sihamoni is greeting Chinese officials accompanying President Xi Jinping's state visit. This could be described as the highest level of format from Cambodia to welcome a foreign head of state. Now, People from all walks of life in Cambodia are greeting Chinese President Xi Jinping for his arrival on this highly anticipated state visit. This is live footage from Phnom Penh Airport. Chinese President Xi Jinping is also greeting people from all walks of life in Cambodia, waving national flags of both China and Cambodia, and of course flowers, to show their warm welcome to the arrival of the Chinese president. This is a welcoming ceremony held by Cambodian King Norodom Sihamoni at Phnom Penh Airport for Chinese President Xi Jinping.
Well, the king has attached great importance to diplomatic relations with China. Well, King Sihamoni met with President Xi in September 2023 when the king attended the opening ceremony of the 19th Asian Games in Hangzhou. During the meeting, the Cambodia king said his country will continue to jointly build the Belt and Road Initiative and a Cambodia-China community with a shared future. And now he greets the Chinese president at the airport.
And this deeply rooted friendship can be traced back to many years ago, and actually was forged by His Majesty 17th Emperor Norodom Sihanouk, and the first generation of leaders of the People's Republic of China, including Chairman Mao Zedong, Premier Zhou Enlai. Chinese President Xi Jinping has been warmly welcomed by Cambodian King Norodom Sihamoni at Phnom Penh Airport. Now his convoy is heading to the Cambodian capital. Chinese President Xi Jinping has arrived in Phnom Penh for a state visit to Cambodia. Chinese President Xi Jinping has arrived in Phnom Penh for a state visit to Cambodia.
This is actually his third stop of his Southeast Asian tour after Vietnam, Malaysia, and this is Cambodia.
Now, for more insight, let's talk to our studio guest. Professor Chu, what do you make of this very warm and solemn welcoming ceremony at Phnom Penh Airport?
Well, I think this is very much expected because even though we're saying this is the first time the royal family has welcomed the Chinese leader in the airport, but actually I don't think they're strangers. Well, His Majesty, the royal family father, actually been living in China for a very long time. I believe His Majesty, Sihamoni right now also been going to China for many times. So they're actually more like welcoming a family member to come back to the family. As a royal family, His Majesty Sihanouk used to say, well, China is my second home. And also, I think vice versa. For many Chinese old friends, going to Cambodia is never a strange thing. So this kind of the high-level visit has already been very frequent and also very intimate. The only thing left for both of our leaders in the future is that how we can, entice this kind of relations, then facing the challenging future together to form this community with a shared fate between the two nations, and also amplify this influence to the whole regions, so that we can benefit every people in this whole region, especially from China and Cambodia. And also, I think through this visit, I think they have a lot of things to catch up with each other, how we can solidify our cooperation in agriculture, modernization, digitalization, energy, as well as for the high-tech, industries, to develop together to make these whole neighborhood, to make this bilateral relation another example to show to the rest of the world.
Cultural bonds that unite, the people of the two countries, especially 2025, the Cambodia-China Year of Tourism. As we mentioned, civilization, mutually beneficial cooperation in both, political mutual trust and laid a solid foundation between the bilateral relations of China and Cambodia. So in this, we look ahead. What can we expect this year in terms of, mutually beneficial cooperation between the two countries?
Right. I think connecting back to what Professor Tu just mentioned about what we just watched, the unprecedented receiving by the King of Cambodia of the Chinese President Xi Jinping, and also about their personal relationships that have been built upon a very long history. I think that tells the rest of the citizens in both countries that the two countries have very common history. We are proximate to each other geographically. Our economies are very much integrated. So the people-to-people trust has already been there to further facilitate the people-to-people exchange. And I think given that Cambodia features very resourceful cultural assets, I think tourism is certainly going to be booming. It has already been very well developed, but I think more and more Chinese tourists are going to pick Cambodia as their next stop or destination for vacation. At the same time, I think Cambodia is also going to benefit from the cultural resources in China. We're looking forward to more tourists from Cambodia. In fact, I have had students from Cambodia over the years who come to our university to study development and other Chinese development-related courses. So that says to all that the cultural exchange and people-to-people communication have been very important, have been a critical part of the bilateral relationship.
Well, gentlemen, let's get more updates first.
All right, we'll go live to our correspondent Tang Bo in Phnom Penh. Hello there, Tang Bo. Tell us more about what is the latest there in Phnom Penh and what is the atmosphere there.
Hello, Hona. Well, it is very hot in here in Phnom Penh, the capital of Cambodia, just like the atmosphere, welcoming the arrival of President Xi Jinping. And this is Hun Sen Park in downtown Phnom Penh. As you can see behind me, that there are a lot of the Chinese national flags and, of course, the Cambodian national flags welcoming the arrival of President Xi Jinping. And early in the morning, as we arrive into this live position, we've seen a lot of local residents gathering along the streets to greet the arrival of President Xi Jinping. And I talked to them, asking about their expectations. They told me that they were looking forward to the state visit, which they believe would improve the mutual trust and, of course, enhance the economic cooperation. This is President Xi Jinping's second visit to Cambodia in 9 years. And according to the local media, that President Xi Jinping is expected to meet with King Norodom Sihamoni and Senate President Hun Sen and Prime Minister Hun Manet. And one day before President Xi Jinping's arrival, that the Cambodian Prime Minister released a welcoming video online saying that he's looking forward to discussing with President Xi Jinping and charting a course of action for the future development of the bilateral cooperations. And in his speech, Manet called the China-Cambodia bond the strongest, comparing it to iron regarding the partnership in various fields between the two countries. And that's echoed with the Central Conference of China's foreign neighborhood diplomacy, which noted that the relationships between China and its neighboring countries, including Cambodia, of course, is right now in its best period of the modern times. And the relationships have entered the stage of interconnections between regional cooperation and the evolving global landscape. Experts say that the state visit reaffirms the ironclad friendships between the two countries. Last year, the trade volume between the two countries increased 13% to over 15 billion US dollars. And experts say that China is already Cambodia's largest trading partner and, of course, a very important source of foreign direct investment. So this time, the state visit is expected to reach new agreements in the areas of trade, infrastructure, and education, of course, people-to-people exchange. And also, experts said that the support from China is very important for the country to diversify away from its garment manufacturing towards the more high value-added manufacturing like electronics, automotive parts, and of course, infrastructure, education, digital economy, and of course, agro economy. Hona.
Thank you so much, Tambor, for the updates from Phnom Penh. We would like to get more insights from studio guest, gentlemen. I would like to go to Mr. Chu first. As our reporter mentioned, our neighboring countries' diplomacy is one of the main focus here during his Three Nations Southeast Asian tour from Vietnam, Malaysia, and now Cambodia. How significant is this trip for China, for the neighboring countries' diplomacy?
Well, I think number one, we have to make it very clear. This has been a long-planned, trip, official trip, because from this top leadership, all kinds of this official visit of this high basically has been planned for a very long time. It shows that there's a key word for China's diplomacy. It's called a long-termism, and also if you add another one, it's called a stability. Because China always, from the 1950s, from the Premier Zhou Enlai's period of time, we always uphold the 5 principles of peaceful coexistence, and that's been very well echoed by the neighboring countries, especially in ASEAN nations. This is a national group with 10 different countries, different religion, different languages, different cultures, anything you name it. They're very, very different, but they still manage to stay together. It's a very different situation, even different from the European Union, but they still manage to stay together, do the economic development, peacefully stay, with each other, and now adding into China into the pictures, and we've been forming probably one of the largest, political stability for the whole world, and also the economic opportunity also provide for the rest of the world. So I think this visit has also been, showing the ASEAN nations, the 10 nations, even though we visited only 3 stops, but also representing the three nations, representing the whole region, is because no matter how turbulent outside world can be, but the far eastern part of this world will stay together. We'll be hand in hand, shoulder by shoulder with each other, stay peaceful and stay stable with each other. And also, I think that will be sending a very strong signal also to the rest of the world. That is, no matter what happened out there, but this part of the world will be the center of the peace. This will be a new free world because you don't need to choose side. You don't need to abandon what you believe. You still have the freedom to do trade with whoever you want, providing the services and product to the rest of the world. So this is the message sent to not only ASEAN nations, but also to everybody in this current turbulent world.
Well, gentlemen, let's get more updates now. Chinese President Xi Jinping has arrived in Cambodia to begin his state visit. He hopes to make steady and sustained progress in building a China-Cambodia community of shared future in the new era.
During the visit, President Xi will meet with the King Norodom Sihamoni and the Queen Mother Norodom Munenith Sihanouk. He will meet the President of the Cambodia People's Party and the President of the Senate, Simanek Tejohon, and he will also hold talks with Prime Minister Hun Manet.
And we'll keep you updated on Chinese President Xi Jinping's state visit to Cambodia.
We'll be right back. Please stay tuned.
Bokatar is a traditional Cambodian martial art. It's an ancient close-quarters combat technique, which became popular at the time of the Khmer Empire. This small school provides free training.
In
2022, UNESCO inscribed Bokatar on the representative list of intangible cultural heritage of humanity. A key factor in preserving its cultural significance is the carvings depicting Bokatar on the walls at Angkor Wat.
បើយើងមិនមានរូបចម្លាក់
នឹងតាក់តាំងនៅតាមជញ្ជាំងប្រាសាទរបស់យើងទេយើងក៏ពិបាកនឹងការកំណត់ថាវាជាអត្តសញ្ញាណជាតិមួយរបស់កម្ពុជាដែរយើងនៅមានស្លាកស្នាមភ័ស្តុតាងច្រើនណាស់ដែលដូនតាយើងបានបន្សល់ទុកអំពីបច្ចេកទេសនៃការសាងសង់ប្រាសាទអ្នកសិល្បៈផ្នែកគំនូរហ្នឹងគេគូហើយបានអ្នកជំនាញផ្នែកដាប់ហ្នឹងបានមកដាប់តាមក្រោយ
The once glorious Khmer Empire has been consigned to history. But 7 centuries ago, a Chinese traveler following the maritime Silk Road came here. He left the only surviving first-hand written accounts of daily life in the Khmer Empire. Now a Chinese team are helping to restore the site to its former glory.
吴哥古迹呢，这个石头是靠石头的重力来把这个高大的建筑把它堆积起来。对于我们维修呢，这是一个新的课题，我们也面临了很多的困难。那么我们在这过程中呢，也是不断摸索，掌握了它一套规律，形成了我们自己独有的方法。同时也结合其他国家的专家的维修的经验，探出了一条自己的维修吴哥的思路来。
Local expert Sam Safaroth is working closely with the Chinese team.
ឆ្លងកាត់ការងារបទពិសោធន៍ដែលយើងបានសហការជាមួយខាងភាគីចិនយើងឃើញហើយថានៅតំបន់អាស៊ីរបស់យើងនេះវប្បធម៌ដ៏ចំណាស់ប្រទេសកម្ពុជានិងប្រទេសចិនហ្នឹងយើងឃើញថាមានវប្បធម៌ដ៏ចំណាស់មួយអញ្ចឹងឆ្លងកាត់បទពិសោធន៍ឬក៏ការងារសហការជាមួយភាគីចិននេះយើងតែងតែផ្លាស់ប្ដូរនៅបទពិសោធន៍គ្នារវាងវប្បធម៌ទៅវិញទៅមក
Over the past 3 decades, China has been one of the 30 countries contributing to this UNESCO-led international effort to restore Angkor Wat. Chinese professionals specializing in fields ranging from archaeology, history and ancient architecture to chemical conservation and scientific preservation have contributed to the restoration effort. The Chinese experts have already completed the restoration of 2 temple sites. Now they're preparing for a new project.
我们对待每一块石头都应该把它当成一个艺术品，当成一个很重要的一个物件。那我们要带着这种敬畏的之心去保护它。
During several decades of work, the international effort has recorded some notable successes.
2003年世界遗产大会上，吴哥古迹呢已经不再列入世界濒危遗产名录，世界各个国家都为摘掉这个濒危世界遗产名录呢做出自己的贡献。
The restoration of the Angkor Wat site is significant for Cambodia's economy. In 2020, the country's tourism sector generated revenue of $1.12 billion. This represented 4.2% of GDP and accounted for roughly 4% of the revenue from all international tourism in Southeast Asia.
វាជាសារៈសំខាន់ដែលខ្ញុំយល់ថាមិនមែនតែដល់សារៈសំខាន់តែផ្នែកសេដ្ឋកិច្ចទេគឺទាំងទំនាក់ទំនងគ្រប់វិស័យដែលអ្វីដែលមានពាក់ព័ន្ធទៅនឹងគម្រោងផ្លូវសូត្រនេះពិសេសគឺផ្នែកវប្បធម៌ខ្ញុំត្រូវបានចូលនិវត្តន៍ក៏ដោយក៏ត្រូវតែមានអ្នកបន្តវេនបន្តទៀត
Safaroth's resolve resonates in the hearts of the children practicing the martial arts recorded on the walls of Angkor Wat.
នៅថ្ងៃអនាគតខ្ញុំចង់ឲ្យល្បុក្កតោមានការទទួលស្គាល់ឲ្យបានខ្លាំងជាងនេះនៅថ្ងៃអនាគតខ្ញុំចង់អភិរក្សល្បុក្កតោឲ្យគង់វង្សយូរអង្វែងរហូតរក្សាដល់កូនចៅជំនាន់ក្រោយដោយអង្គរវត្តដែរប៉ុន្តែខ្ញុំចង់ឲ្យកូនខ្មែរជំនាន់ក្រោយយល់ច្បាស់ដឹងខ្លាំងពីល្បុក្កតោហើយចង់ឲ្យអនាគតទៅល្បុក្កតោគឺនៅតែមានឈ្មោះឈរជាប់នៅកម្ពុជារហូត